Hi, and welcome back to another video on Norse mythology. So the last two videos were talking about the gods, and these two videos are going to be talking about the cosmology. So first and foremost, central to Norse mythology is the great Yggdrasil tree. The Yggdrasil is a mighty tree whose trunk is the geographical center of the Norse spiritual cosmos. The poem Palooza from the Poetic Edda reads as such. I remember yet the giants of yore, who gave me bread in the days gone by. 9 worlds I know, the 9 in the tree, with mighty roots beneath the earth. So from this we can tell that there are 9 worlds. So the 9 worlds are Asgard, Midgard, Vanaheim, Jotunheim, Niflheim, Muspelheim, Alfheim, Nidavellir, and Hel. While the locations of all of these cannot be known for certain, they can only be guessed upon, there are a few that we know. So on the vertical axis, we have Asgard at the top, Midgard at the trunk of the tree, and then we have Hel beneath the roots. A couple of interesting things to note about the Yggdrasil, with the first being that the gods hold their daily council at the tree, and this makes sense seeing as it is the geographical center of all the worlds. The other interesting thing is that the trembling of the Yggdrasil actually signifies the coming of Ragnarok. And Ragnarok is something we'll get more into in one of the later videos when we talk about that tale. So let's go through all the different worlds in detail, and we'll start with Asgard. So Asgard means enclosure of the Aesir, making it a very literal translation, as it is the world and home of the Aesir tribe of god and goddesses. It's said to be located, again, in the sky at the top of that vertical axis. Asgard, as previously mentioned, is said to be connected to Midgard via the Bifrost Bridge. As for etymology, the Gard part of the words Asgard and Midgard seem to come from the Germanic concept of that which is inside the fence, Innengard, and outside the fence, which is Utengard. So if you were Innengard, it was orderly, law-abiding, and civilized, while Utengard was considered chaotic, anarchic, and wild. So this refers to the geographical plane and the human psyche, as most things in Norse mythology relate to real human experience, and that's how Vikings were able to get so much value from it. So Asgard is the model of Innengard, Jotunheim is the model of Utengard, and Midgard is said to be between Innengard and Utengard. It's also said that each god and goddess has their own mansion in Asgard, and that the Germanic people believed that these resembled the mansions of their own nobility, which I thought was really cool. Now we'll move on to Midgard, which is the land of us. Midgard means middle enclosure and is also called Manaheim, or home of man. This makes perfect sense, as Midgard is the home of humanity and human civilization. As such, it is the only one of the 9 worlds primarily in the visible world. It's believed to be referred to as Midgard for a few reasons. The first is that the serpent Jormungand lives in the sea between Midgard and Jotunheim. And it's also in the middle of Jotunheim, making it the middle of the horizontal axis of the Yggdrasil. It's also referred to as Midgard because of its vertical place on the plane of Yggdrasil, with Asgard above and Hel below. So the world as we know it was created after the gods slew the giant Ymir and created various parts of the world from his body parts. Super metal, and it's something that we'll talk about in a couple of videos when we talk about the creation of the cosmos and the creation of the first humans. Another interesting thing is that it's said that during Ragnarok, Midgard, along with everything else in the cosmos, will sink into the sea. However, it's also said that it will rise again and be even more hospitable and fertile than before. So now let's talk about Vanaheim, or homeland of the Vanir. It's the world of the Vanir tribe of god and goddesses, and based on a text in the Poetic Edda, referred to as the Taunting of Loki, the best guess of the location is that it is west of Asgard, as a line in the text states that Nord went eastward when he went to Asgard as a hostage at the end of the Aesir and Vanir War. So this would suggest that they are on the same plane as is often depicted in the drawing of the Yggdrasil, with Sturluson on the same plane. Basically, they're branches on the same plane rather than being at the canopy like Asgard is. Due to the lack of Gard in the name, some scholars guess this indicates Vanaheim is Utengard, again meaning chaotic, anarchic, and wild. So like the Vanir themselves, who aren't as polished and they value farming, fertility, and climate more than the Aesir, Some speculate that they are Outguard because they are therefore more natural and less cultural. Now on to Jotunheim, or World of the Giants. It's known as Outguard or Beyond the Fence, again because it exemplifies Outengard, meaning chaotic, anarchic, and wild. Jotunheim is described in the Poetic Edda as deep, dark forests, mountain peaks with endless winters, and otherwise inhospitable and grim landscapes, which is definitely not somewhere I would want to be. It's separated from Asgard by the river Iving, which is a river that never freezes over. So Ymir gave birth to giants through self-fertilization. After Odin and his brother kill Ymir, the gushing bloods drown all of the giants except Bergelmir and his wife, who escape, and then they create all of the giants who come after them. We'll talk more about this in the tale of the creation of the cosmos, but this event sparks the bitter and never-ending rivalry between the giants and the gods that eventually leads to Ragnarok. So now we'll talk about Niflheim and Muspelheim. Niflheim, or World of Fog, is the primordial world of ice. As such, it's described in terms of cold, mist, darkness, and ice, and no one lives in this realm. Muspelheim, on the other hand, is the primordial world of fire and home of the fire giants. It's said that the giant Ymir was created when ice from Niflheim and fire from Muspelheim combined in the abyss. Their existence was only ever recorded in the Prose Edda by Snorri Sturluson, who was popular for over-exaggerating or weaving in his Christian ideologies. However, the basic cosmologic principle can be tracked further back into the Germanic past, leading us to believe that this is something that was true to Norse mythology. So for Vikings, the world then begins and ends in fire as Ymir's body created the world, and the coming of Surt, the fire giant, with his flaming sword, signifies Ragnarok. Now let's talk about Elfheim, or Homeland of the Elves. It's the world of the elves, and the elves were considered a demigod-like class of beings who were more beautiful than the sun. They inspired the arts, music, and creativity. Freyr is said to be the ruler of Elfheim, despite not being an elf himself. Now is a world that's sometimes called by two different names. The first is Nidavellir, and the second is Fertilheim. Either way, it translates to low fields, dark fields, homeland of the Black Elves. In short, this is the world of the dwarves. The dwarves were master craftsmen and smiths, and as such, it's expected that their halls were very grand, and this is something we'll get to see firsthand when we come upon the tale of the creation of Thor's hammer. We get to see their skill in action. So we believe that Nidavellir, like Hel, is located beneath the ground, and that it's likely a labyrinth of caves, mines, and forges. An entry from the poem Volupsa mentions it as such. There stood in the north, in Nidavellir, the golden hall of Sindri's family. And we believe that this means it's underground because north was commonly meant to mean downward. Something interesting in the stanzas 10 through 13 of the poem Volupsa is that the witch who is relaying the information of all the worlds is talking about the land of the dwarves. She mentions these as those of Durin and proceeds to list the names that Durin gave them, and they include some names that we're familiar with, like Bomber, Thorin, Killy, Philly, and Oakenshield. What makes this so interesting is that this is just one of the many ways our lives have been touched by Norse mythology, perhaps without us even knowing. It seems J.R.R. Tolkien grabbed these names straight from the text and used them for Lord of the Rings. A lot of his Tolkien lore seems to be based on Norse mythology. Finally, of the 9 worlds of the Yggdrasil is Hel, or Hidden. It's sometimes referred to as Helheim, or the realm of Hel. It's the world of the goddess Hel and of the dead. It's said, again, that Odin sent Hel to her own realm upon her birth, as well as sending her siblings to their own locations, so that they couldn't cause any trouble. She's the daughter of, again, Loki and Angrboda. Angrboda is a giantess, so Hel is often depicted as a giantess herself. Hel is again located in the roots of the Yggdrasil, and it's said that it's surrounded by a wall with only one gate, and the gate is guarded by a dog, and the only way to access Hel is through a long path called Helvag. So while Snorri over-exaggerates and asserts it was a place of eternal misery, this actually isn't mentioned anywhere else. His Prose Edda was written after Christianity had overtaken pagan ways, so Christian influence can especially be seen here. Hell is unlike our version of hell in that you don't end up here for your behavior during your life, although how you end up in hell wasn't really certain. We'll talk more about hell as well as the other places of the afterlife in the next video, so be on the lookout for that one. Rolled it. Oh, came out of nowhere.